Put me over here. Welcome back to the Degenerates. The degeneracy is here. It's early morning on a Friday. We're doing something a little different today. Before we get to what's going to happen today, just want to remind everybody, thank you for all the likes, shares, subscriptions. We really appreciate it. Today, Marcela's not here, but I wanted to do something a little different about my good friend, Arturo. We've been friends for a very long time, and we've talked about on this channel, on these videos, that we like to bring a lot of different kind of perspectives, especially from Hispanics, because it's really important to us to make sure that we kind of cover all the ground. And we realized that a lot of what would be the good word for it? A lot of our perspectives are very similar in terms of the people that are usually on. A lot of the topics that we cover, we kind of cover it from a very specific side. So I wanted to kind of double down on something that I've said that I have a lot of friends that don't agree with me, and that's okay. And I would kind of want to set an example. So today, I don't know what are we talking about specifically?
I think what we agreed on was how you and I both come from immigrant parents and we're immigrants.
Oh, okay. So, originally, I had wanted to do politics, right?
Right.
But then we were like, no, let's not start there. Let's kind of go like a different way. So a good way to kind of set it up is we're gonna talk about how some of the same backgrounds lead to completely different ideologies, right? Essentially, like you're very conservative, traditional, religious, and I'm very liberal, progressive, not religious, but we essentially have almost the exact same background.
Exactly the same thing.
Yeah, pretty much, right? So, we just kind of want to go to that. We also share a lot of like opposing views and semi-opposing views in terms of politics or maybe in terms of culture in general, but like not too crazy. And then also we're still able to just like hang out and kick it and have a beer and have a great time, which I think is probably the most important thing, especially right now in the country with how divisive and polarized everything is. I wanted to kind of make sure. So if for some reason, just a full disclaimer, for some reason this conversation, if it gets heated, I don't think it will, because we usually never get heated conversations, right? But if for some reason it does, I want to preface this with, this is one of my oldest, very good friends. We're not trying to have any gotcha moments or anything like that. I actually really hate that about the internet, how they do that shit constantly. But inevitably we might be like adjacent to that in some way, shape, or form, either me to you or you to me. So I encourage just the discourse, and I want to say I love you, bro, and I'll hit you in a minute. But I want to make sure that I put that out there. That's like a full disclaimer, because this isn't one of those things where we're just trying to get like, we're gonna attack the other side.
Exactly. So we get that a lot on the internet already.
I know, bro. It's the worst. It really is the worst. I hate it, because I'll be online, and I have 2 accounts online. I've got like one where I follow the people that I like hearing from, and then I have one where it's like the completely opposite side,
right?
Like the people that I would never want to hear from, and I like separate them. But like one of them, they're both kind of echo chambers, but like one of them is like the right wing echo chamber, traditionalist echo chamber, conservative, and then one of them is like, I've now realized that it's not even fully left, but like it's like, I don't know. If this is left, then it's probably like right here, like middle, left middle.
Right.
It's not like all the way out there, but it's also not like super centrist. So,
and you kind of get to see that a lot. Most of the people that argue on the internet don't realize it, but either if you're right or you're left, you're not that far off from each other.
Oh, 100%.
Both are closer to the middle than
I know.
you think.
100%. 100%. But the crazy part about it is that the people that are on the farthest hate the middle. They hate the middle. Like, it's probably worse to be in the middle than to be on the other side. Because on the other side, it's like, I know I hate you. But on the middle, they're like, you're just pretending. You're just trying to like suck up to the other side.
Yeah.
And like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, they forget about humanity.
Yeah. Or party line. Like, you're not with us. You know what I mean? So it's just crazy. But I hate that. Yeah. It's crazy. It's crazy because that's, some of it is the only content that you can consume in terms of hearing that side. So I have to click on the like, so and so owns this person, or eviscerates this
Like
person.
that
I'm
little
like,
fin-
oh God, you did not eviscerate anybody.
There's one that I really dislike right now on the conservative side. It's like this little Jewish 15-year-old boy, and he has like long hair, and he's all like, "Oh,
He's trying to be
tell
the
me
next
5
Shapiro.
books that you've read," and it's like, you know who I'm talking about?
What does he do?
He goes on different podcasts, and he's I think he's on conservative side. I'm not really sure, but I think he's a Jewish kid. And he goes and talks to like only girls, like only fan girls. And
Oh
stuff.
yeah.
And he's like, I don't even know why I'm talking to idiots. Like, tell me 5 books that you've read. I mean, and he owns them, but like, what's the point of that? Like, there's no.
It's just for the views.
Yeah,
it's just for
the views.
it's not even for the content. It's just for viewers that want to feel what it feels like to have to really. Here's what it is.
It's entertainment.
Here's what it is. People, you know how like when you get cut off on the freeway or something, and you get so mad, and you're like, you're like, man, like I want to tell you off right now. So then immediately in that moment, the entire 10 minutes left for you to go to work, you're thinking about like the alternate scenario of like, man, I would have gotten out of my car, and I would have fucked up your car, and I would have grabbed you out of the chair, right? Like you start thinking about that scenario, right? But you wouldn't do it. But it's entertaining to think about it, right? A lot of those people go on podcasts knowing that what they're fulfilling is not even like an ideological purpose. It's that you, like the viewer, has an internal fantasy of telling people off because they're so angry sometimes that they want to see somebody like, else do bro, it. Like somebody did it. Yeah, own them. Right. Like, you know what I mean? And like, that's corny, dude. That's corny. That's corny as fuck from the person doing it, and corny as fuck from the person watching. I'm like, bro, I don't want to see this. Like, bro, like, yeah, maybe the OnlyFans girl is an idiot, but also, like, why would you bring her on?
Right, like,
you know what I mean?
Surround yourself with that.
Right, like, in general, I know a hella OnlyFans girls that are really smart, but like, you're not getting them on because you're not gonna be able to have that moment. Right. You know what I mean? That like fucking gotcha moment. So, you know, some of those things are like really cringy. I'm like, oh God, I don't want to see this. And then other times there's like great discourse, and I'm like, okay, this was cool, this was fun. Yeah. And then the really fucked up part about it is that all of that is happening like at the surface level, and then on like a politics level, it never reaches. Every other politics level, like politicians are like, bro, we don't know what the fuck. We don't even know how to open Twitch.
But what it does is it creates like that division.
Oh yeah.
Or not even creates it. It kind of creates this mirage of the division that there is between like the left and the right. Because it's all entertainment and gotcha moments rather than like getting down and dirty to like what
I have a theory.
Really think.
I have a theory, and we'll get off of politics, but like I have a theory that most progressives are actually a lot more conservative than they think, and most conservatives are more progressive than they think.
I agree.
And if I say that to a liberal, they'll be like, no, never, right? So then they double down on going further. And I'm like, that's not what the point that I was trying to make, but like, okay, you're just being a brat, right? But then if I say that to like somebody like on the super right, then they'll be like, no, not the libtards, like, you know? And I'm like, that's not the point that I was making. The point that I was making is that we all we all definitely share like a common goal, right. And we just, but we're like failing to see it, especially the populist side, because there's like left populists and like right populists, and I'm like, bro. If I had to pick my main thing that I'm like, this is mostly what I'm against, is corporate greed. And that to me is like the most bipartisan issue.
Which, by the way,
it shouldn't even be like a left versus right. I know that it gets framed as like the right has this romanticization of small businesses, and the left has this like romanticization of like big tech, right? But at the end of the day, like corporate greed is corporate greed. And they'll fuck you whether you're some Oklahoman. Is that how you say somebody from Oklahoma?
Maybe.
Bro, I don't even know if these places really exist. I'm just saying like it doesn't matter if you're from Arkansas and you're some like living in a rural town. They'll fuck you just the same as like if you're in Palo Alto working somewhere. You know what I mean? They don't give a fuck. Like corporate greed is bipartisan. And if you know where to look for like campaign donations and stuff, like the big corporatists give money to both sides. They don't give a fuck, bro. They're like, bro, like, what? I don't give a fuck about what y'all want to pass. Just make sure I make more money.
Scratch my back.
Yeah,
yours.
You know what I mean? So, anyway, back to what? Tradition, culture? What
yeah. Well, where do you want to start?
So I guess like background, right? Like we both immigrant parents.
Right.
We're both
Immigrants.
We're both eldest child. We're both grew up in Houston, low income neighborhood. I mean, the similarities are on point, right? Like went to public school, graduated public school. Where we first met was a job, and we still, in some way, shape, or form, hold those jobs today.
Right.
So, like, our perspective is our lines are pretty similar, but we ended up at very different ideological, personal belief results. And I don't know. Like, what do you think is the biggest catalyst for you ending up on a different side of the? I don't even know what to call it. It's not ideological, but like just in personal beliefs, personal preference.
Right. So, me personally, I think my whole upbringing through my family was on the conservative side. But like you said, like you're conservative, but there's progressive in you. Mm-hmm. Because I got to see like the what's it called, the liberal, the progressive side. My own family unit with my parents and my uncles and my aunts and all that. And I grew up thinking that I was a Democrat. Like, I went to high school and I was like, yeah, Obama all the way.
Yeah.
Right? And it wasn't until I saw Obama and, what's his name? The news anchor from Univision, Jorge Ramos.
Oh, yeah.
Like, sit down. And that's kind of where, I guess, I started seeing things from a different perspective, because Jorge Ramos is sitting down with Obama and he tells Obama, like, hey, you are known as the great deporter. Like, under your presidency, more Hispanics have been deported back to the country. And Obama was like, I'm not talking about this. He's like, no, let's just talk about it. And Obama gets up, leaves, and gets security to kick him out. And I was like, what the hell was that? Like, how come I didn't know about this?
Yeah.
And that's when I started, like, digging, right? And I was like, well, like, I always thought Democrats had our back, but it seems like they really don't.
So how do you reconcile that with, like, just in terms of that, like, deportation? Because Obama deported a fuck ton of people. Like, so many people.
Right.
Right?
Most out of any president.
Right, for sure. So how do you reconcile that with currently with the right being the party that wants to deport more people?
It doesn't show in the numbers.
How so? Explain that. Put me on game.
So I think even now, if I'm not 100% sure, so don't quote me on this. Even now, I think Biden already surpassed Trump on deportations, even though there's open borders, right?
Right.
Well,
like define open borders. What does that mean? I mean that. I don't mean that again. This is not a gotcha moment. I don't understand those terms because I don't know what that means. Like, truly, I'm not trying to be ignorant.
I mean, me having family in the Valley, right? And McAllen, to be more specific. Like, my family tells me, like, on the daily, they get to see people just walk across like nothing. And they're just walking, right? And it's not through the puente. It's not through the bridge. It's, like, through the river.
Okay.
And there's no repercussions to it. Or immediate repercussions, at least.
Right.
And
I do know that if they catch your ass, they send you back.
Right, for sure.
So in that sense, if I had a pushback, it's more so like, is it like when you say open borders, it feels like a fear tactic. It feels like everything's open. It's a free for all, right? But what's really happening is that maybe there's just certain parts that are more vulnerable, but it doesn't necessarily mean that. If you find the vulnerability in where the border is and they still catch you, your ass getting sent back. So then, then it's not a policy. It's just a vulnerability in the policy, right. in the boots on the ground.
Right. The only thing that has changed about that is now that you can claim that you have a child, right? And you get put through a case. So you don't get deported immediately.
So then you go through asylum.
Right.
Right. And asylum laws have been there for a long time. It's not like this isn't like a brand new, like, mail-in ballots shit. You know what I mean? It's like that's been there since the 80s, since the 70s. Like people been getting asylum for or political asylum and whatever.
But yeah, so that's kind of where, I guess, going back to what we were talking about, that's kind of where the tipping point began for me.
That's when you start to question a lot
and I
of
just
like
started looking, kind of like how I'm questioning right now. Like I just found out Trump made money off of Big Pharma through the COVID shot, so now I'm like questioning myself, like what is going on? Like I thought Trump was not like excluded from that, right?
not a businessman.
I guess, right? But the whole like I don't need anybody to fund me, I can fund myself type of thing, right? The outsider. But so yeah, that's the one. And I started just looking into like the history of like my roots, which is something that my family kind of throws a lot of me. They're like, "Te estás olvidando de tus raíces," and I was
Right.
like, I'm not like.
Yeah, we talk about that on the podcast a lot, like the identity crisis of like how to feel American because you contribute to this country and you should feel you should feel like a proud American, but also like how do you continue to keep culture, like how do you continue to keep your roots alive or honor them?
Right.
You don't have to continue them, but honor them. Know that that's where you're come from. Have respect for it or whatever. Blah blah blah. So yeah. Anyway.
Right. So you know what I just remember? It's completely out of subject. Remember whenever we were working and I'm not gonna say her name, but it was this manager of us.
Yeah.
Redhead.
Okay.
Curly hair. She
Yeah.
had
I know who you're talking
a
about.
bit obnoxious child.
Oh yeah. That child was the worst. The worst.
So remember when she said that like immigrants should get sent back because they don't pay taxes.
Oh yeah. And both you and I were like,
she was like, we pay freaking taxes. What do you mean?
We're like, chill, bro. Chill.
Anyways, I don't know why that came up, but I just remember. So then I started looking into like the history of Mexico, and Mexico's a very liberal country. Right? They say they are conservative, they are traditionalist because they consider themselves a Catholic country.
Yeah.
But on the government side, it's very liberal.
Very liberal.
Very progressive. In the sense that it's mainly like liberal parties leading the country.
Yeah. And even if it's like a conservative party, it's still liberal-esque.
And even like the liberal
adjacent.
I guess the liberal in Mexico is not considered like an American liberal. I guess it's more like a liberalist or no.
Yeah. Also, I think this is where like a definition thing comes from. Like we're so hyper partisan and we're so hyper polarized that we use these terms like willy nilly, and we like a lot of them we use them synonymously. Like if a Republican says liberal, they mean a Democrat, or if a Democrat says conservative, they mean Republican, right? Like we'll use them interchangeably. But I think in Mexico it's a lot different. I think in Mexico conservatism and liberalism is a matter of value, and their party is a matter is like left wing or right wing on a working level. On like
for example, like PAN, right? PAN is considered a liberal party, and like their idea is that abortion is not a woman's right because it's no longer the woman's body; it's another person, it's another body.
Yeah,
and the first right is to life. So like, but a liberal here would not say that.
Yeah.
So just so that people know that liberal in Mexico is not the same as a liberal here. But yeah, so I started looking into the history of Mexico, and like I started off with like the heroes of all heroes, Benito Juarez, right?
My boy Benny boy.
You know, I was like, man, Benito Juarez, like an indigenous, stood up to Maximiliano and the Spaniards, and you know, and
then you're going deep here right now,
right. So more like that was the guy. Indigenous, became president, you know, and he separated the church and state, right? And I was like, okay, well, let's look into him, right? Because he called himself a liberal, and I wanted to reassure myself.
Yeah.
Right?
You were trying to find reasons to confirm that you were a liberal. Okay, yeah.
And I started reading, finding out more about Benito Juarez, and that's when I kind of realized that, yeah, Benito Juarez separated church and state, but he didn't do it to benefit the people like a liberal would, right? So this guy took like properties and finances from the Catholic Church, but he kept them to himself. And it's like, okay, well,
This is gonna go back to a common theme of hoarding wealth for me
right.
and corporate greed. But okay, go back.
So then I'm like, okay, well, let's keep reading. And he did some reformas. What are those?
Yeah, reforms. The reforms. Yeah.
He did some reforms, and it's like, okay, well, these reformas they're gonna help the pueblo. They're gonna help the town, the people. Nope, this guy took lands from the people too, and he kept them to himself. He's like, okay, well, let's keep reading, you know. And after reform, you get to see that, like, he presented himself as like a savior. Like, I'm here to save the country. I'm here to save you. But really, he was just benefiting himself.
Right.
And
you associated that image with progressive liberals because he claimed to be a progressive.
In a way. So then I was like, okay, well, let's look at Maximiliano. He was the conservative party. Mm-hmm. He had the same idea, separation of church and state. Now, when it says separation of church and state, you got to think about it like in the sense of like the Church of England, right? Mm-hmm. Like they didn't want, kind of like how Jefferson didn't want there to be the Church of America and the Church of, and Benito didn't want the Church of Mexico, in the sense that, like, if you disagree with the church or you don't do the way the things the church do, it's like they'll cut your tongue off or they'll burn you alive, stuff like that, right? Like that was kind of like the separation of church and state was for them. Right, but Maximiliano was like, okay, well, my plan is to give the properties back to the people, and then
the more popular sentiment,
right? But the thing is, like, this is a foreigner from Spain, right?
Yeah, that's not gonna get you some amount of points.
So then,
the conquistador trying to run for president, bro. That's not a good look,
right? So it was really bad on the Conservative Party to bring a foreigner to.
Yeah,
lead,
even though he might have been the best bet, maybe.
Right, and he had this other reform that he had in mind, that he was gonna bring down the working hours and he was gonna stop child labor, and like he had all these things. I'm like, these are things that I agree with.
Yeah.
Right. So what does Benito Juarez do? Benito Juarez is running against this conservative party, and he can't finance it anymore. So what does he do? He writes a letter to the United States saying, "Hey, you can."
We need some guap.
Right. You can cross through the Nahuatl, right? Like you can cross through the Nahuatl Trail, no problem. Just pay us. But it was around the time that the Union and the South were fighting. Benito Juarez would have made a lot of money out of that for his campaign. But the United States,
the French helped though too, because Mexico was about to fight the French at that time.
I don't really remember.
Like right after the civil, like during this, or right before, Mexico fought the French, and had the French won, then the South would have had. I know this because I did some research on it recently for a pod. If the French had won with conservatives on the Mexico side, the French would have been able to give the South, the Confederate South, aid.
Probably, because that's the only reason that they didn't agree to exchange to the Nahuatl Trail.
Yeah,
but so they're like, yeah, no, if we do this, yeah, we'll benefit, but so will the South. So they declined it. So what does Benito Juarez do then? Like, he doesn't have any money to finance his campaign. The Conservative Party is starting to pick up steam, and it's a foreigner.
Damn.
So then he does what any narcissist, egotistical person would do. He goes after Maximiliano.
Damn, with a name like Maximiliano too, like you losing for sure. Like Benito against Maximiliano, bro. Bro, they already little broing you with your name, and then you're gonna be against somebody that's named Maximil. That literally means to the max, bro.
So he ends up killing Maximiliano, and he ends up being president for 20 years.
Bro, wild times back then.
Now, to be fair, it was 20 years not because he broke like Constitution, they just weren't term limits.
Right. So, but like, isn't that crazy though? That like wild times back then, there's like, yo, I'm just gonna kill my political opponent. You know what I mean? And then I'm gonna just become president. Like, yo, what a simple plan. Yeah. Fuck a conspiracy theory. I mean, we going for it.
JFK Jr.? No, I'm kidding.
We going for it. So you reading into like history a little bit made you question that what you thought was the political party of your assignment, I guess, that you were assigned to, didn't necessarily have the same traits that you thought that it had, and that the other party might have had some of those traits at different points in time. So it created a tug of war for you.
Right. I mean, because after Benito Juarez, then I went to Porfirio Diaz, right? Because Porfirio Diaz was considered.
Our grandfather's name is Porfirio.
Yes, this is considered the worst president in the history of Mexico.
Yeah.
But I mean, in my opinion, it's a little unfair, and he's a liberal too.
Yeah.
But yeah, this guy.
So then, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but like you're at Mexico history. How do you end up at like there on like American conservative values?
So
from reading that history.
Right. So then I start, remembering everything that I learned as a kid. Pull yourself by your own bootstraps.
Which is like probably what your dad told you.
Right. Which
is a conservative value here.
Conservative value. Marriage is marriage belongs to God. God created marriage. It's between a man and a woman. Right. Anything between outside of man and woman is not considered marriage. Right.
That goes back to the conservative value of Mexico. Like they're conservative in value,
right,
but they're not conservative in policy.
Right. So like their morals are conservative, but their policy is very liberal.
Yeah.
I mean,
and the way that I rationalize that is there's a lot of Mexicans, probably a lot of Latin Americans, like just in general, that are very conservative in value. However, they also have like, in my mind, the Latin American countries, all of South America and Central America, they're all traumatized by the conquerors. So
even the local ones,
they are conservative in value because that's what they like, but they also have a deep fear of big intrusive power. Mm-hmm. So their policy reflects, don't tell me what to do. Let people do what they want to do, because we've already seen what it's like for somebody to come in and start telling people what to do.
Right.
We saw people die. We saw, like all this stuff. So like, we don't want that. But also like, now that you haven't told me what to do, I'm going to be conservative as fuck. You know what I mean?
A quien no le gusta la ayuda, right? Who doesn't like to
right.
get the extra
but like,
hand, extra
that's
help?
The way that I rationalize like being almost homogeneously conservative in value, but like liberal in policy, is that they have this like generational trauma of being conquered. Right. And they're like, we don't want that to happen again.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It does happen like that, yeah. So then a lot of the things I learned from my dad kind of like
started to like seep through,
yeah. Right.
So then you aligned yourself with the party that more resembles that value.
Exactly.
Yeah. With those kinds of values.
Right. But again, it was what I got to hear, but also what I got to see. Nice. Because within the family, I got to also see people take advantage of welfare. Right? Uncles, aunts.
Yeah.
I got to see them take advantage of government assistance programs. Take advantage of, a lot of things that the government was handing out. And unnecessarily, like...
Yeah, they
will get more than they needed.
Yeah.
So then it's like...
greed.
So
did your family ever use government assistance program?
I mean, my brothers were born con la tarjeta dorada.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, so was this dude.
Tarjeta dorada.
This dude.
And so I got to see a lot of that, and then I'm all like... And then you get to see the culture within your own family, and you're like, man, I kind of don't want to grow up to be like that, right? Like, I kind of want to grow up to be different.
I have that theme in my family.
I think we get to see this a lot in Hispanic families, where I once heard this a Christian pastor say that a lot of boys grow up, but they die being boys.
Yeah.
So I was like, I don't want to be that. I don't want to be a boy for the rest of my life.
Yeah, there's a lot of man babies out here.
Exactly.
For real.
So I was like, and I get to see that in my family, like the men in my family, excluding my dad, right? I'm like, they're like 35, 45, but they're living life like they're 18, 20,
Yeah.
Like when you have a family.
Yeah.
You're single, you can do whatever you want, fine.
Yeah.
But you have a family.
Yeah, you have responsibilities.
My país tienes pelos en la cola.
Right.
You know, like, behave like the way you're supposed to behave. You know, take on the responsibility that you decided to have.
Yeah.
And a lot of that just kind of like led me to that.
Right. How did you get from so like that makes total sense. And fathers is gonna be a good point of like convergence here. But how did you go from? I assume your parents are Catholic.
They are Catholic, yes.
But you're Christian.
I am, Pentecostal.
Oh, Pentecostal. I didn't know which denomination.
Well, I mean, they're all considered Christians.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
They usually tell them.
But like, I don't know exactly. Like, I don't know the nuances of it all. So I just like.
So how did that happen?
Is that more so just because of your of preference for your wife? Like, because your wife was there?
Not really. I know that this is something that Carlos used to throw in my face a lot, and may he rest in peace. So I grew up Catholic, but I did get to see how the church takes advantage of their power and position.
Right. Catholic church be hella big, bro.
Yeah. And I remember I was doing my confirmation, and they had a bazaar. You know what a bazaar is?
Yeah.
It's like a festival, for those of you that don't know. It's like this festival they do at church, and they asked for help. Now, here's what they asked.
Yeah, the church needs hella help all the time.
And let me tell you why they needed help.
For real, I don't know they really do. I'm not saying that as a joke. Like I've never seen an entity ask for so much help.
Yeah, so
like, bro, bitch, we need help. What you mean? Like, what do you mean? I came here to try to get you to like get me some help spiritually, and then you go ask for me to open my pockets, bro. Like I ain't never seen somebody pocket check me so much when I'm just trying to be a nice person. I'm trying to figure out how to like live life well. And be like, hey, bro, like
it's kind of like that meme where it's like you walk to the grocery store, you're the cashier, and it's like, would you like to donate $1 for the poor? I am the poor.
For real. Like, you didn't see inflation? You didn't see what we're dealing with? You didn't see eggs are $6. You're gonna sit here and tell me make it $7 so that someone, bro, me. Unless that charity is funding me, well, how do I sign up for that charity? To be on the other end, not to work for it. Like, what the fuck?
So then I was 14, 13 years old probably. And this is what they said. They asked my mom, we need you to buy the food.
Damn.
Make the food. Buy a tent. Set up a tent. Sell the food. Collect the money.
And then they get percentage.
The money.
Yeah.
No, give us the money.
Oh, all of it?
All of it.
Oh, shit. So they weren't even acting like a banquet hall.
But the thing is,
they didn't want like just a fee and like, you might as well have just gone to a banquet hall.
Yeah, and here goes
DFW or some shit.
And here goes my mom. She make asado de puerco.
Damn, that sounds good.
It sounds really good, actually. I didn't have breakfast, so I'm kind of hungry.
Damn.
So she makes asado de puerco. She sells it. She gives all the money to the church, only to find out that they did it so they can renew their contract for live broadcast on TV.
Your Catholic church live broadcast TV? Bro, what? Our Catholic church still like, when you walk in, all you hear is the...
No,
that's all you
do
get.
Too. You do too, but you get to see like, I think it was like Canal Estrella. I don't know, remember that?
Nah, I don't
I think it was like 67.
Bro, I didn't even watch church while I was in church. I'm gonna watch it on TV.
It wasn't even like a Catholic. It wasn't even like a Christian channel.
Like a yellow star with a face?
I don't remember, honestly.
Nah, that's the Teletubbies.
I think with cable, it was like...
That's a baby's face. That was the Teletubbies, bro.
I remember I used to just scroll through channels.
Is your mic on? Mic.
I used to scroll through channels because we didn't have cable, so I was trying to find something.
Yeah.
Damn, you're looking for the porn?
Okay.
Okay.
You were like...
Channel 2.
46, BT After Dark.
And then, there used to be one channel. It was a Spanish channel. Like, I don't know what they were doing, games and all that sort of stuff.
Right.
And it'll switch throughout the hour, and it had a yellow star with a face in the bottom.
Damn, it was probably that one, bro. You might have tuned into Arturo's church whenever with the money that they got from his mom's.
Yeah, maybe, because sometimes there were like just church.
Yeah, and it was like a regular.
So
like,
you felt like so in that moment you felt like the church was taking advantage of your family, and it made you question
well
the integrity of that institution.
church,
Yeah. Of the Catholic Church as an
It's
institution.
an institution, and then what's it called? I had questions during my confirmation. Like the Bible says, we can't call anyone father, but like our earthly and heavenly Father. Why do we call the priest the Father?
Right.
And it's like
He's a conduit,
like
bro.
just ignore it. Like I would just get ignored. I remember there was one.
They be
time,
doing that a lot.
they
be doing that a lot to kids. They be doing a lot of shit to kids, but they be doing a lot. They be doing a lot of ignoring.
La señora Ramirez told me, like verbatim, no leas la Biblia, lees los trabajos que te estoy dando. Like that's what she said. She said, don't read the Bible, read the assignments that I'm giving you.
Damn.
And I'm like,
Don't
what?
read the good book.
And I was like, okay. So then I find out that the purpose of a church is not to take from the community, but to give to the community, right?
Ideally.
Yeah, ideally.
Well, I mean, traditionally speaking, the purpose of the church was communal. Right. Just in general, like in pueblitos and stuff like that. Like it's so funny that you're saying like you're telling this story, talking about how you got away from the institution, or
the way I got away was by this random guy I met at my job, and started questioning me even more. And
Yeah. My bad, my bad. So like the way that you started questioning it, and then you eventually found another home for your spirituality and your belief system, and what you're saying right now is kind of the way that I got back into it after years. I'm not religious, but like when you met me, when we first met, I was anti-religion. I'm sure you remember. I was like heavily anti. It's not worth it. It's just a bunch of bullshit. You can do it. It wasn't that I was very anti-religion. Is that I was very self-empowering. Not to myself, but to other people. I'm like, no, you're good enough. You can do it. You have what it takes. You don't have to go there. You don't have to. Yes, if you want some value from it, fine, get it. Like, be a good person. The golden rule, great. Like, read Huckleberry Finn. It doesn't really matter which book you read. Just come out, be a good person. But you can do it. I was more like on the wave of I want people to feel empowered of themselves, right?
Now, to be fair, when I met you and you made me start questioning even more, and that's when I ended up falling away from like the Catholic Church.
Yeah,
like a lot of the points that you brought up made sense, even to the point where I did ended up going back to my faith. Like a lot of the points you brought up still made sense to me. So it was kind of like a struggle. But,
and I have arrived now. I think where I am right now, I'm a lot more sympathetic to religion in general. I'm not anti-religion anymore. I'm just not religious. It's not helpful for me as a belief system or an institution. But historically speaking, I ended up at a tug of war for myself whenever I arrived at the logic of if I'm gonna blame religion for all the bad things, then I've got to credit it for all the good things. And then you become a student of history, and you're like, you know what? Religion was a very huge communal place. Religion was a very huge place for families to come together, for it to feel like a community, for it to feel like there was a spearhead of that community, for it to feel like the community was heading in a good direction, a good place for people to feel like they're becoming good people. A lot of when it comes to communal space, that's whenever you start to get camaraderie, you start to get the forming of an actual civilization where people feel like they can rally together, like they're in support of each other, and then the church then imparts a lot of help and a lot of liberation, but then it also provides a lot of shelter in trying times and this and that. And I'm like, okay, in that sense, I get it. And then you look at it on a psychological perspective. People really don't like feeling alone. That's one of the biggest mysteries to me. Fuck aliens. To me, the real purpose of life, if I had to boil it down, is how do I make sure that I feel the least lonely as possible?
Yeah, it's a big deception from the enemy.
And religion helps with that a lot because we all want community, right? This is part of the reason why, again, such an interesting conversation with you, because this is part of the reason why on a political level, people would be like, oh, gender politics is like this and that. And I'm like, we all do gender politics. Or no, sorry, not gender politics. Identity politics, sorry. Like we all do identity politics because we all belong to a group, right? Like, and we advocate for that group. If like we may not identify with the Mexican struggle because we might be more American than, than Mexican or more Texan, right? But we still identify with Texans. We still identify, right? So if I identify with people in this neighborhood, I'm identifying with people. I want to advocate, right? We all do identity politics. However, the weaponization of it becomes a interesting point for me, and that whenever you get that to a psychological level, we all want to feel that community. We all want to feel like we're part of a group that supports us, whether it's familial, whether it's like your direct family, or just like just for further community wise, right?
You can end up in the wrong group, like a 6ix9ine.
I mean, if you could, but like the thing is that even the people that are in the wrong groups feel supported.
Right.
Do you understand what I'm saying? That's why people stay in the wrong groups. That's why people stay. And hey, what's up, permission? That's why people stay. That's why you hear stories all the time about like, oh, I joined a gang. Well, why did you join a gang if you knew it was bad? Because those are the only people that supported me.
Right.
Those are the only people that made me feel heard. Those are the only people that made me feel validated. Those are the only people that maybe it was with bad intentions. And that's actually a pretty good allegory to religion, maybe to your point. Because then eventually they have that coming of age story. You get to the point where like, no, they didn't actually have my best interest at heart. They just told me that, but they really wanted me to go kill people. And then now I'm in jail, right? But like that probably is how you probably felt about religion. Like, or the institution rather than like the actual belief system, right? Like they were telling me a lot of sweet nothings because what they really wanted was the money, right? Mm-hmm. But like they may have not had my best interest at heart. They just needed something ulterior motive.
I'm not trying to like talk down on the Catholic Church or
I
anything,
am.
I mean, in the Catholic Church, that's when I had my first experience with God, because I remember that La Señora Ramirez, like she was playing the guitar. And she told everybody to close their eyes and, just... You
had a visceral experience.
Right.
Yeah.
And I, like, zoned out. And that's where, God presented himself to me. I didn't get to see his face, obviously. And he said, tell your dad your grandpa will be here next year. Because at that time, it had been several years that my dad had been trying to get my grandpa to come live in the States with us. And I remember I went up to my dad and I was like, hey, pa, like, this happened. God told me to tell you this, and my dad got mad at me.
Damn, bro! Like I just told you I saw God, and then you gonna sit here and tell me, and you just get mad?
And he was like, "No andes diciendo esas tontas," like just. And
damn,
I was like, "All right." Next year, my grandpa was there,
fine.
But somehow I still fell away from that, right? And then.
So you ended up at Pentecostal just because they share more of your belief system?
Not really. So. I started dating Marilu.
Right.
Because actually, before we get to that, I was dating this other girl, Colombian girl. You remember her?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I remember one time, I think it was like our third or fourth time breaking up.
Oh yeah, that shit was wild back then. Yeah, it was very volatile.
So she parked outside. She's like, "Let's talk." It was a red moon, and we're talking. And she's like breaking up with me, and I'm like, "How the hell did we end up here again?"
Yeah.
Right? Like this. Like how the hell did I end up here again?
Yeah.
I thought I had learned. And back then, I used to write a lot of poems, and I wrote a 3-page poem. Sorry. And in that poem, I was cursing the crap out of her. The worst.
Fire.
Cursing. When I get to the 3rd page, I flip it. Right? 2 pages are just cursing her, and then I go. But if there is a God, God's gonna send me this kind of woman, and down to the like every detail. This is how I'm gonna meet her. She's gonna be wearing a yellow dress. She's gonna be dark skinned. She's gonna have black curly hair.
Damn, you prophetic, bro.
I wrote everything down.
You're the poster child for manifesting.
So then,
is that how you really met her? She was wearing a yellow dress?
Yeah, but not the way that I imagined it.
Damn. So God threw a curveball at you.
He threw me a
God was
curveball.
like, you
See,
thought.
Because when I wrote it, I was thinking like, you know, like a blue bonnet field, and she'll be wearing a yellow
Damn,
dress.
Texan for sure. You see what I mean? You see what I mean? Like we're all Mexican. But like, well, we're Mexican until we got to be Texan again. You know what I mean?
So then the way I met my wife, I met her actually in high school, but I re-met her because we like, when she graduated, she's a year older than me. So she graduated a year before me. I didn't get to see her for like another 2 years. Now, true story, I had a huge crush on her in high school.
Fire.
But I was always the timid guy, the shy guy that wouldn't say anything. So then I used to dance folklorico. You know that, right?
Yeah. That's fire.
One of
the
the girls that I used to dance folklorico with said like, "Hey, come dance folklorico with me. I need a partner. You know, like, you'll have fun."
Oh, that's right. She was there, right?
Right. And I was like, no, thank you. You know, like my knees are doing better. I'm no longer having knee pain. Like I'm good. Like I don't need it. She's like, come on. And she like insisted for like 3 weeks. Her name was Ashley. And one day I was like, you know what? I'm gonna go. But I went with the idea of like, I'm just gonna go so you can say I went and you can leave me alone.
Yeah, you just shut the fuck up.
Right. So I sit there, bro, and
so she's wearing the yellow folklorico dress?
I'm getting there, bro.
Damn, bro, you fucking you riling me up right now.
So I get there, they're getting ready to perform un cuadro. A cuadro is whenever they do 4 dances, and like they do like a play of 4 dances, right? Mm-hmm. And I sit down like on a little bench. It's more like a staircase. And the men are in the front and they're like posted. Macho, big charro man. Yes. And the women are in the back, my feet real quick. But they're giving their back to us, and with their dresses like this, like hands together like that. Oh yeah, so you don't really get to see their faces. Yeah. I mean, you wouldn't either because when you're looking at it, the men are facing you, and the women are behind the man, but facing away from you. Yeah.
It's very symbolic. Yeah.
Right. So they start dancing. So they start dancing. I'm like, all right, this is cool. You know, I can catch up to the steps, even though I haven't done it in a while. And the men open like that. They split. Damn. They open, and the women turn around and they like blossom out of their dress like that. Yeah. Bro, the first girl that came out was Marilu, and I was like, I'm joining.
Damn.
Like that's it. I'm joining. Like, and she had a yellow practice dress, and she like came out dark skin.
That's better than the blue bonnet. Fuck all that, bro. God wrote you a whole check. Well, God said you said you wanted $5. I'm gonna give you 50.
50. So then they finished, and I'm just like mesmerized, right? Because I didn't know she danced, and she's a really good dancer. She's way better than I would ever be.
Dance is the greatest aphrodisiac. It is.
So then she like we make eye contact. She comes up to me and she goes like, I know you. And my smart self was like, no, I don't think so.
Arturo inside is like, I know you too. I wrote a poem.
I was like, no, I don't think so. And she's like, yeah. Like we gone to school together. And I was like, did you go to Burbank Elementary or Burbank Middle or something? Because it was like by that side of the hood, right? Because I went to like the white people school, Wild Trip.
Yeah.
Well, white people, question mark. So she's like, no, Wild Trip. And I was like, I did go to Wild Trip, but I don't remember you. The whole time I know who she is.
Damn, we're trying to play it cool too. But like, so you went there. I was there. I skipped class a lot.
So I was like, okay, well, I mean, like, I don't think we had a class together. She's like, Spanish with Miss Nelson. Now, Miss Nelson was like the coolest teacher ever. She was a black teacher.
Damn, fired.
But she taught Spanish, and she was a good Spanish teacher.
Damn, even better.
Yeah, I mean, I got like, an 80 in her class.
Damn, she fucked you up. She said, you don't know Spanish, bro.
I thought I did,
She
but
said, all y'all native Spanish speakers, you better learn.
So then, derogativo, propositivo, I don't know.
Damn,
stuff
for
like
real.
that.
Like the derivative, the past participle, the present participle, or the past, whatever. I'm like, damn, fuck, I hate conjugating in y'all's future tense on a Tuesday. This is how you conjugate this verb. If it was future tense, but only if the future tense is on a Tuesday when it's raining. And like, stop. Just tell me how to conjugate this damn verb. Going back to English.
So she goes like, yeah, Miss Nelson. And I was like, what? Like, I had Miss Nelson. I'm playing along, right? Like, I'm faking that I don't know her. And she's like, yeah. I was like, oh, it's so nice to meet you, blah, blah, blah. She's like, are you going to join? And I go, yeah. I joined, and then the time she was dating this jerk.
Damn.
And we ended up dating later on. They broke up. We dated. And then it clicked. Like
The poem.
So that was the first sign. Like, this is how I met her. I described her. I said I want her to be able to like get along with older people. I want her to get along with people her age, and I want her to get along with children. Mm-hmm. Right? Checked off the mark, checked up the boxes and everything.
What a weird request, bro. How old were you?
20.
Bro, at 20, I'd have been like, she gotta have a fat ass. You know what I mean? But man, bro, you ahead of the game, bro, because at 20 years old, I'd have been like, I don't like her if she don't go to Fabian's. I don't like her if she don't go. Like, you know what I mean?
There's actually this joke I tell at my church, because one of the things that I wrote is like, I want her to be outspoken, to never hold back what she thinks. And I go, man.
That's very liberal of you, though.
I was like, maybe if I could go back, I'll probably change that one a little bit.
A little too outspoken.
But no, I love my wife.
Everybody loves a high-powered woman, so she got a problem with you. I'd be like, damn, I could have really been having a just submissive ass bitch right now.
No, my wife is submissive. She lets me lead. But you know how in the Bible it says, like, I will send you a helper. A lot of people think that helper means that, like, she's just
a servant. Yeah.
Like, she's gonna do what you're asking her to do. But really, in the Hebrew word, I forget what the Hebrew word is. It means someone that will help you build your trust. Mm-hmm. So, like, areas where you are lacking
that bro
trust.
Brought it back to Hebrew, bro. You fucking Jedi mind tricking this whole thing.
So so like if in areas where you're lacking trust, like she will build you up. That's pretty much what it means. And so then we started dating, and she invites me to her church, and I'm like,
I think I remember this.
Not really a church guy, you know. I really don't believe in God like that. I once did, but I found out the truth and stuff like that.
The truth.
And but she was like, yeah, come. And she invited me like 3 or 4 times, and pretty much the same thing. I said, okay, I'll go. But
you guys are dating at the time. At this point,
we're talking.
Oh, okay. So you guys aren't dating. She probably doesn't want to pull the trigger until you go.
Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah.
But I was like, okay, fine, I'll go, but just know that I'm going with the purpose and the idea to show you that God doesn't exist.
Oh, damn, bro. That's heavy.
And that was the only time that her parents would allow her to go out, besides if there was like a company.
Oh, so they're like conservative.
Yeah.
They're like hella conservative.
Yeah, that's another subject to touch later.
Yeah. I'm just saying, if they don't let her out and she's 20 years old.
One of the things,
you know what I mean?
I mean, they did let her go out when it was like a friend's party or like a company party, stuff like that. Don't let her go out.
I'm thinking about like how strict that is. Yeah.
But one of the things that my wife and I constantly tell each other is like, we're gonna take the good from your family and the good from my family.
Yeah. And this is how it should be.
Right. And one of the things that we both agree on is that just because of what's between your legs doesn't mean you're gonna get benefits over the other person. So just because you're a boy doesn't mean you get to stay out till 10 and your sister has to be home at 8.
Yeah. That's you fighting back against the patriarchal ways of like Mexicans.
Maybe. I don't think that's what it is.
Well, maybe it's not the patriarchy, but it's the abuse that comes from the men that. So it's the type of abuse that men in the patriarchy will use, and then the patriarchy gets colored at that as that.
So what my wife and I agreed is like, show us that you can be responsible, show us that we can trust you, and then we'll do it.
Yeah.
But until then, if your sister shows me you're more responsible than you, your sister's gonna stay out till 10. You'll be home.
Right. So then it's a lack of ageism also. Like you're not celebrating somebody's age more so than another person.
Right. So I started going to her church, and we go to church at 11, get out like at 12:30, 1. And then we go about our separate ways. 8 o'clock at night, after we spend time with our families, we call each other and just start debating about.
I like that. I like when I debate
about like how
girls that
about that Sunday service, right?
Oh, okay, yeah.
And we're just talking, and I bring up the old points like, why are they crying? Why are they shaking? Why do they gotta lift their hands?
Yeah. Why the drama?
Why
Right,
all
yeah,
that
why-
drama?
why-
Why does he
why-
have to scream?
Why the theatrics? Yeah, yeah.
Right? And we're like, and then I'll question like the sermon and all that. And I remember it was December of 2012, and it was a Christmas special. And the week before that, I told my wife, um, uh, uh, this actually before we started dating.
Mm-hmm.
I told, because I don't remember, we had a Christmas party with Discover. That's where we actually started dating. But I told her, like, I feel, this is the Sunday before, I feel like there is something within your church that everyone has that I wish I could just snatch and like take it with me, but I don't know what it is. And she just laughs. I was like, what? Why are you laughing? And she's like, oh, that's what we call the Holy Spirit. I'm like, get that out of here. Like, don't give me that. So then the following week is a the Christmas special. And I go to it, and they call it an outreach. This is what a basar for the Catholic Church is, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So I go to the Christmas special, and there's an outreach. And this is the first time that I get to see a church do what they're supposed to do. They have a living room set, a bedroom set, scooters, laptops, on a raffle. But only people that are not members of the church can get a raffle ticket. If you're a member of the church, you don't get a raffle ticket.
Mm-hmm.
So they're giving it to the community.
Oh, okay.
And I was like, they're not charging for the food. Food is free. I'm like, what is going on? Like, this is not the way a church behaves, you know? It's the way it's supposed to behave, but it's not behaving the way that other churches behave. So that caught my attention a lot. Well, come to January of 2013, and I hear for the first time pastor's wife preach, and she's preaching about the blue light in the emergency room. It means, you know, someone's dying, got to bring it back to life. Mm-hmm. And she's talking about, like, your soul is dying, you're dying, you're going straight to hell, right? And you need, like, God is trying to revive you. And every time she's talking, it feels like she's talking to me, and I'm on the second floor because it's a medium-sized church, but the second floor is like a tiny aisle. And I just feel like she's talking to me, and I told Marilu at the time, I was like, hey, I'm going to go down to the restroom. I use the restroom. I'm washing my hands. And as I'm washing my hands, this is where I tell you that Carlos used to give me a lot of heat for it, right? I look up in the mirror, and I see my face, like, muddy, like, dirty, kind of like a mechanic.
Yeah,
Their
yeah.
hands get black.
Yeah.
I see, and I'm like, what the heck? And that's where I had my first experience with God. Like,
Your second experience?
Second one.
Yeah.
First one since the last one. And he's like, who am I? And I go, whoa, like, no, this is not happening. Like, this is my head. And I start washing my face, and nothing comes off. I'm scratching. I actually had scratch marks on my face from, like, trying to, like, take off the stains. And he stays quiet, and I'm scratching. He's like, who am I? It got louder. And I start crying. And I noticed that as I start crying, like, the stain is, like, removing itself with my tears. And the third time, it's like, who am I? And that's when I said, you're God. And I threw myself on the floor in the middle of the men's restroom, started sobbing like a baby. And someone walked in the restroom and prayed for me. I have no idea who it was. And walked away. And ever since, that's where I converted back to Christianity. And I'd say Carlos gave me heat because I would tell you guys about it. And Carlos would be like, nah,
I remember
you
this.
just pussy whoop, bro. You just trying to get on that.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm like, no.
Oh, God.
I was like, this really happened. And I know, like, it doesn't make sense. Like, it can't be real, but
Yeah, it's not rational.
I heard it. Like,
Yeah.
it was there. And yeah, and that's how I got back to my religion, my religious
Your
way of
current
living.
form, your current state of...
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, the interesting thing that you brought up earlier that I think is a pivotal point or a convergence point is your father instilling a lot of values in you about what it means to be a man or what it means to be of tradition and family and conservatism and
Right.
all of that stuff. Because like you, we also have a family that is very conservative at times. But my father is not. I don't even know how to describe it. He's not. He's traditionally he's conservative in certain values of his, but he. I think if I had to classify my father as a very specific, the most important quality is that he's a realist, and he looks at this and he says, from his own experience, he says, "I've lost a lot." A lot of things that I've had that I've seemed valuable, societally speaking, religiously speaking, all this stuff can fall apart at any time because of it happened to me and my upbringing and like my tragic circumstances and certain things like that. He goes, however, I've had to overcome and I've had to adapt and this and that. The best qualities that I have that I've developed in order for survival has been adaptation, flexibility, has been intellect, education, like a certain core tenets that are very important. And then after that, then you can rest who you want to be on top of that. Is kind of the way that I would describe his philosophy. So whenever he's raising me, he has his own values of his household. He cares a lot about how the house is ran. He cares a lot. Like my mom is very, very, very outspoken. He encourages that. He's not possessive. He sets a good example in that regard. But then he also then talks to me and he says, you don't have to do anything that you don't want to do. Again, that goes back to like the policy versus value, right? He goes, but what I will ask of you is, if you want to succeed, you have to be able to be malleable and adapt and flexible in this environment. The environment that I come from doesn't exist anymore. I can't tell you what to do, because if I tell you what to do or how to do it, I'm preparing you for an environment that doesn't exist anymore. Mm-hmm. Do you understand what I'm saying? For good and for the better. Do you understand? Like, I got out of there. We're no longer in that environment. Good. We're in this environment now. I'm figuring out as an adult here, but like you growing up have to figure out what to do in this environment. So I've got to instill qualities in you that will best help you with that. And that meant
still conservative.
Yeah. That meant everything from police brutality, how to handle yourself with cops, how to handle yourself with bullies, how to handle yourself with people, how to handle yourself with white people, how to handle yourself. Like, there's a lot of intricacies there of him saying, like, this is the reality that you live in. You're in this country. This is a new language. This is a new environment. This is a new thing. There's some things are better. Some things might be blah. But like, you've got to figure out how to make this work. And like, I can't necessarily. But so like, flexibility, adaptation, try to be the smartest guy in the room. Try to like, all of these things. But never, this is what tradition is. This is how this is how you treat women because you're a man. It was never through that lens. It was more like, this is how you treat people because they're people. Period. This is how you treat friends because they're friends. Period. This is what being a decent human being is. This is what's not. This is what, right? So it was more so like absolutes or generalizations, and then like a core tenet of flexibility, adaptation, and malleability. Have the ability to change your mind, and with the ability of changing your mind, it also means having, like, it kind of goes without saying once you think about it. If you have the ability to change your mind, you also have the ability of saying that you were wrong.
Right.
Do you understand? So like, all of those things kind of go hand in hand or whatever, right? So I end up not religious, still to this day. Although, again, I appreciate religion for the communal aspect and what it does to people, how it brings a sense of community, a sense of belonging, a sense of identity, a sense of purpose. It can do all of those things, and all of those things are valuable for meaning. If they're valuable to maintain a lot of structure in your life and discipline, and I think that that's great. I don't need that. I don't need religion for me to be able to work to get all those things, but now I don't knock it, is what I'm saying, right? And I can criticize religion for its practices or as an institution without criticizing the intended purpose of it or some of the benefits. I can like differentiate the two. I can divide it. And then I also end up a lot, but because of that, and because of my upbringing, because of the things that I've had to do, because of where I grew up and the poverty and I now subscribe myself to a different, and this goes to the point where like, I end up on the more liberal side, is I subscribe myself to being an incredibly empathetic person to like almost to a fault maybe, but like to everybody that I encounter. My job when I meet people, or what I'd like to be my job is, or I guess what I focus on when I meet people is empathizing with where they're coming from and their struggle. That to me is the most important thing. How do I recognize your pain specifically, and then how do I validate it, and then how do I make you feel like I'm hearing what you're saying without telling you that it's not that you're wrong.
What do you do in situations where you can't?
I don't think I've ever been in a situation. I've been in situations where people are so headstrong in their beliefs that they won't change their mind about their beliefs. But I don't think I've ever been in a situation where that person that's so headstrong doesn't feel like I understand where they're coming from. You understand what I'm saying? Okay. There's a difference. Like, it'll be very easy for me to say. It could be very easy for me to get in a heated discussion about policy or politics or conservative or whatever, like all these value ideologies, and for us to get into a screaming match of like, no, you're wrong, you're a piece of shit, blah, 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 blah. I can't believe you would do that, and go into that world. It'd be very easy. It's harder to end the conversation it's cool. You said your piece, I've said my piece, but at the very least, what I want you to understand is that I understand what you're saying. And that it's coming from a real place. Your experience is a valid experience, but end at no resolution. That's really hard because people can't conceive of that. That's what I feel my purpose is. That's what I'd like to. What's the word I'm looking for? That's my goal whenever I meet, and it happens that it doesn't even have to be like a heated discussion. It could be whenever I meet, I'm trying to think of I was in an Uber the other day and the Uber was Pakistani. I was like, oh, bro, like, what wasn't that? Oh, actually, no, it wasn't Pakistani. That was another person. It was, he was Iranian. And he moved here through the Iran hostage crisis. I was like, bro, tell me about blah, 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 blah. And I was asking all these questions, blah, blah, blah. And again, like, my goal was, like, obviously, it's a very unique experience. But like I hope, I don't know, I didn't ask, but I hope that by the end of that interaction, he was like, bro, like I felt validated. I felt like, bro, like I was able to speak. He didn't have an agenda, but he was very curious, and I feel like he understands a lot of where I'm coming from, and he validated my human experience. And I do that with everybody, even on the big hot topics, abortion, trans, but like my main job that I subscribe to myself is I've got to try to empathize with that human experience, validate the human experience. And then you could still be wrong, in my opinion, but that's not the important part. Mm-hmm. You understand what I'm saying? Like, the important part is for me not to convince you that I'm wrong. The important part for me is for you to feel like you don't even have to feel like I'm an advocate for you. You just have to feel that I heard you and that I understand that that's a legitimate human experience. And then after that, it could go wherever. If you are mad at me after that, then that's cool. But like, that's my purpose. That's my goal. And it comes from that. It comes from that being like extremely flexible because it's benefited me a lot. My survival, in a lot of ways, has been predicated on the fact that like I have to be in different rooms all the time. Sometimes I've got to be in a room where it's just the guys shooting the shit, and you've been there when we're just shooting the shit and whatever, and it's wild and it's crazy. But then other times I've got to get in a room and negotiate a salary, and then other times I've got to be in a room and try to pitch an idea, and other times I've got to be in a room and try to like play a song, or other times I've got to be in a room and I've got to be an entertainer, or other you know what I mean? So like that kind of ties into like passions and life lessons and things like that. But overall, in general, I'm like, I've got to learn how to adapt. That's my core tenet in my life, is you've got to be flexible, you've got to adapt. And in order for you to really be successful at that, you have to take in as much of the world as possible and as much ideology of things that you may or may not know about or may not agree with, or like you have got to take it in and you've got to like internalize it. Because when somebody comes in from that side and you want to be able to make them feel like you're not against them or you're not invalidating them, then you've got to be able to pull that out and be like, okay, I see you. This is what I know about that. This is right? And it's been the most beneficial thing in my life on a personal level, on a financial level, on a upbringing level, on a creative level. It's all been beneficial, but it's also been beneficial on a friendship level. I've been able to cultivate friendships with people that are on complete opposite sides, like passionately, and I've been able to get those people to say, and I know that this is problematic in and of itself, but I've been able to get those people to actually mean when they say, you're different. I'm cool. I can be in a room with you and I don't feel like I'm in a hard space. I've gotten people to be against a lot of things that and go to the places where that happens. You know what I mean? Like I've gotten people that don't agree to feel so comfortable around me that I could be like, you want to go here, you want to go there. Say, I can get. It hasn't happened like in a big way, but I can guarantee you that I'd be able to get somebody that I know is like extremely conservative and is polarized on the echo chamber, but they like me. I can guarantee you I could take them to a drag show, or I can guarantee you that I can take. You know what I'm saying? Like, and because they're with me, they'd feel comfortable. If they were by themselves, they wouldn't. You know what I mean? And that to me is my purpose. I think that comes from what I ultimately want my profession to be, is just an artist. If my goal was to be some sort of like politician or a CEO or this and that, my perspective would be very honed in on like, this is kind of what it takes. This is what it's. I understand the CEO perspective. I understand the politician perspective, but my job is my function in this world. And I've decided this from even before I met you, and you can attest to this. My function in this world is, how can I be how can I create the most art that I possibly can? And because of that, it colors you can't be an artist without understanding struggle. Mm-hmm. You understand what I'm saying? Even if all you write is happy shit. You can't be an artist without understanding happiness. You can't be an artist without looking at a mother smile at her kid, despite the fact that they're Muslim. And understand that that's a beautiful smile. Yeah. You understand? Like, you can't do that. It's like tug of war, right? So, because that's where my perspective lies, I can't help but be, progressive or liberal, because then I can't undo or unravel my deep need and urge to empathize with people's experiences, and then at the same time invalidate them with an ideology that I'm dead set to, right? To me, it works much better for me if I have my ideology that I prescribe myself to, my belief system, my day-to-day workflow, my day-to-day habits, who I choose to be in my inner circle, while also saying, while also saying, okay, I don't agree with you. I don't think guns like that or whatever, but also I don't want you to get so heated because I'm attacking you. I'm not attacking you. It's a valid a position, and I value you as a human being, right? But it's interesting that the convergence point was fathers.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? It's interesting that like your father leading by example and going into that leads you in a path where it's like, okay, I'm validated. I feel validated. This is where I find a lot of meaning. This is where I find a lot of purpose. Let me reinforce that. Let me double down on that. And then you start to build from there. And then you end up at a place at your church now where you're very happy. You probably feel a great sense of community. You feel a lot of purpose there. It becomes a big part of your day-to-day. It becomes a big part of your week, right? And it's interesting that came from you saying, is my father that kind of started showing me these things. And then it's interesting that on my end, it's also my father that's like, this is kind of the way that this is how you should move forward. And despite almost identical upbringings, ending up at very different ideological spaces.
You know, from my side, what I felt my purpose was from a very young age, 12, 14 years old probably. I felt that I had to be, and at that age I was like, I just need to be a father. Like that's my purpose, be a father. Yeah. But then as I got older, I realized that, especially working with kids, I realized no, like you're not supposed to be just a father. is supposed to be a father image, and
Interesting. Okay.
because you get to see it. Like a lot of the kids that we work with, like they're sad. Like the divorce rate being so high.
Yeah.
Like these kids are sad. Like
Yeah.
and I'm not trying to blame the parents, but working with children, I get to see children cry. I get to see parents argue, like in front of their
Yeah,
children.
you see how it affects their day to day in small ways that are actually big ways.
So I just felt like that was my calling to be a father image, and it kind of has a lot of the similarities that you have. Like I have to make sure that I understand where they're coming from.
Mm-hmm.
I have to be able to validate what they feel.
Yeah.
I think the only difference between you and I is that I guess I am gonna say what I think is right for you.
Sure.
You're gonna say this is what I think is right. Take it or leave it. Right? I think
I actually, this is it's a great point. It's a great point this is a great example of approach, because yes, you're right. You're gonna take in that information and you're gonna say, oh, okay, got you. And maybe you're looking at it as an adult. Maybe you're looking at it as a man. Maybe you're looking at it as on a religious level, and you're like, this is what's right for you, right? Depending on their age, if it's like a really young kid, I might not say anything. But like if it's a teenager, say they're 17. And I've had these conversations before, say they're 17, 16 or whatever. The very first question that I ask after they come to me with those kinds of things is, do you want my input?
right.
That's the first question.
It has to be.
If you don't want my input, I'm not going to start preaching. I'm not going to start saying like, you need to do this. I'm not even going to do it. If they say, no, I don't want your input. Oh, sorry. After they say, yes, I do want your input. My second question is, do you want me to make you feel better, or do you want a solution? And then they're like, what? Like adults never asked me that before, because they're two very different things.
Right. Some people just want to be heard.
You would assume that the solution makes people feel better, but that's not always the case, because somebody could be in debt and you're like, the solution is for you to stop spending. But then they just look at that and they're like, bruh, like, I feel like you're attacking me right now. You know what I mean? Because like you're saying, you're calling out all the mistakes that I've made, right? And I'm like, that's not the point. That's not my point is not to call out the mistakes.
Are you calling out all the mistakes? Or
well,
just
in their mind though, in their mind, this is just the point of me saying, like, just because I give you a solution doesn't mean that somebody feels better about it, right? So I asked, do you want me to make you feel better, or do you want a solution? And then if they say I want you to make you feel better, then I just like coddle. Right? So it's okay. Sorry, I had a thing. It's okay. It's not a big deal. Things will pass. Like all these like
generalized comments.
Generalized platitudes. You're okay. You're beautiful just the way you are. Blah, blah, this and that. You know what I mean? And then it just, thank you so much. Oh, hug. And then it goes on, right? Hopefully you find a solution, right? If they say, I want a solution, I say, what kind of solution? Because there's a lot. I don't know what kind of person you are. Where do you come from? Like, what are your parents? What do your parents think? Have you talked to your parents? Right? Like, I start going into all these things, and then I say, okay, well, I have to tell you, if you want a solution, I'm going to give you like 3 options that you can take, because I don't know who you are. I don't know what you're going through. I don't know your experience of this and that. But for me to prescribe what I think is right that I would do feels a little bit like I'm leading you towards whatever, like, I don't like feeling like I'm indoctrinating people. Right? So I'm like, hey, so here's what I would do. But then there's also this solution. You could go this route. And then there's this thing. If you like this, if you already believe in this, that might be really helpful. You know what I mean? So I tend to give options at that point.
Right.
But again, this goes back to it's a good exercise of approach, because my approach is 100% based on, again, what I described about like being highly empathetic and understanding that there's a lot of factors and a lot of perspectives all happening at once. And more importantly, that my perspective is not the subscription, or is not
you're achieving what they
the prescription,
seeking,
right.
not what potentially.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, it could be the right thing,
right?
But ultimately,
it might be.
It's what they're seeking.
And there's more than one ways to skin the cat.
I've actually had this conversation with my mom recently, because she was. And I know this is one of those ones that I said, I might come out in a bad light or whatnot, but a lot of people are seeking happiness, right? And me as a Christian, I know that happiness is not what we're meant to have. We're meant to have holiness. And I was talking to my mom about it, and I was like, for example, Mom, like if one of your children like started doing drugs, like would you be okay with it? And she's like, no. And I was like, what would you do? And she's like, I will try to make them stop. And I was like, but that's not gonna make them happy.
In that moment, yeah.
Right. And so that's kind of like my perspective. Is like, yes, I understand, I validate what you're feeling, but ultimately we want what's best for you, not what you want to hear, not what you want to seek. Ultimately, we want what's best for you. And I don't just do this in the sense of like bringing them to Christ or anything, but in general, like, you know, recently at work, I have a coworker, and she's struggling at work, right? Some things happen, and I told her like, hey, like I know what you want to hear is like everything's gonna be okay,
right?
We're all gonna end up getting along, but you just need to remember, like we're your coworkers. Like once you step out of here, like we're just that, your coworkers. Like we can maintain a professional relationship with each other, and there's a huge gap between her and I, right? Age gap. But yeah, and I think it helped her because now she's able to come into work, do her job, and not feel miserable because she knows
because she's bringing her life inside.
Well, she was taking her work life outside.
Oh, okay. Yeah, leave that shit at work. Don't ever work off the clock.
So that's kind of like you and I, like we have very similar approaches. The only difference is that I'm not willing to put aside what I think it's best for you in order for you to hear what you think is best for you.
And and that is a big difference because I am less concerned with what I think is best for you, and I'm more concerned with how you will feel like you're the most empowered in that situation.
And me personally, I feel it because growing up, I heard a lot of things that were meant to make me feel good, and they made me feel good temporarily.
Yeah.
But in the long term, it's still there.
Yeah.
Like we never really got to the root of it.
That was gonna be my response to your drug question with your mom, where you're like, what if your kid was doing drugs? Like, what would you do? You would tell him to stop. Like, going into that. My response at the end would be like, we have to find out what the real problem is. The real problem is why are the drugs there? What is it masking? What's the unhappiness that's not being felt there? What's the lack of this? What's the pain that is causing that action? We need to try to solve the pain, and then hopefully if the pain subsides enough, then the action will stop. But stopping the action, to your point, doesn't take away the root of the problem, right?
Yeah. No.
And because again, this is
most of the times it always ends up back to what the first thing you said. Loneliness. People feel
yeah. Or a lack of meaning or a lack of purpose.
Right.
Men right now have a big problem with that in general as a country. Statistics show, right? Like that, there's a lot of men gravitating towards very specific sphere of the internet. There's a lot of men gravitating towards. There's a lot of the suicide rate for men is not looking good, right? And a lot of that is primarily maybe on a general level, like the loneliness, but also like purpose, meaning, right? There's a lot of right-wing people that I think are grifters, but start off with a good message, right? Somebody like Jordan Peterson will say something like, clean your room, right? Something like, like a lot of these like highly intellectual types, more than willing to prescribe really great advice, right? And men flock to it because there's a big lack of purpose, there's a big lack of drive, there's a big lack of meaning in people's lives, right? And for me, getting to the root of it is probably a lot more important than stopping the behavior.
Right. I mean, in order to stop the behavior, you need to be able to get to the root.
Right. Now, I guess where I was going, forgive me. Where I was going with that is that then like elevates and transcends itself to a political level, because then when we'll get to like the politics realm, right? Then they'll say like the opiate crisis, the prescription pills, we have a problem, epidemic, blah blah blah, this and that, right? And then on one side you'll see, well, you gotta you've got to create a bad consequence for the behavior, and the behavior will stop. That's the right wing argument. Right. And then the left wing argument is like, no, we've got to like figure out what the root of the problem is.
And talking about Jordan Peterson was the one that said that, you know, one cannot live without the other. You need both the conservatives and the progressives.
Yeah, it's true.
And it's actually funny you mentioned that because...
what's our time? Hold on. Okay, cool.
About year. When did Chapo Jr. get captured?
Oh, I don't know. For the first time. But they let that boy go.
Exactly.
So
whenever the Chapo Jr. got caught, my wife and I, and then he was released within like 24 hours.
Yeah.
My wife and I like had a conversation. Now, have in mind, my wife and I are both conservative, and we're both very proud about being Mexican. Like, extremely proud.
Yeah.
And
that's something else. That's for another day.
What's it called? My wife and I were standing on different sides.
Oh yeah, where were you?
I was in Trump. The Mexican government should allow Trump to send the U.S. military to kill anybody that's killing innocent citizens and start killing what's it called? Narcos.
Yeah.
Right. And my wife was like, no, the U.S. military should not step on American land.
On Mexican land.
And we both did it for Mexican land. We both did it for loving Mexico. Mine was like, there is this like cancer in Mexico.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you can't handle it on your own, then seek help.
Yeah.
And my wife's all like, yes, but the help you're seeking is going to stay there. And it's going to want us.
Yeah, we're imperialists first and foremost. So we're not going to go in anywhere without getting something in return.
So my wife's like, yeah, we'll get rid of it, but then we'll have another problem.
Oh, yeah, for sure you'll have another problem. So, I mean, I think you'll have problems either or because,
but the
narco conversation in and of itself is very different, but I get your point. The narco conversation is very complicated because narcos, the political system and the government in Mexico needs so much help in general that it leaves a void that narcos fill in a community that even the communities themselves feel like the narcos aren't that bad.
Well, because
you know what I mean?
Mexican government doesn't do things the way they're supposed to be.
Right. So then,
and then when the right person actually steps in, like, they get murdered.
But you're right. And then that's a very good example. That's a very good example of why politics is so slow. Because you're both right. On one end, you're thinking about a steadfast, clean-cut, rapid, critical condition solution. And she's thinking about, okay, sure, that may be a solution, but is it really a solution? Right?
To me, it's like we are in a time where most countries can act civilized for the most part. I think Mexico and the United States can have a civilized exit, right? But it was a very interesting conversation. Yeah. It lasted hours, actually.
But that's a good point about politics in general, because that's where we are. That's why we gridlock so much. Mm-hmm. That's why, I mean, any big hot topic. Like, say, guns. I know, I actually, this is so interesting. I know a lot of gun owners. I do not know one gun owner that is not for common sense gun laws. Like, every gun owner that I know, these people are like diehard military, like, they have so much respect for guns that they're like, I don't want random people having guns. This is like a responsibility. They treat it like such a huge responsibility. They're like, you got to be trained. You got to know what the fuck you do. Like, yeah, you got to like somebody that's not stable. You can't give them a gun.
At the other end of the spectrum.
Right. But they really feel like that. Every single gun owner that I know really feels like that. They're like, yeah, common sense gun laws are like, they're common sense. They make sense. I'm for them. However.
What is common sense?
They toe the party line though. They're like, this is the big problem that I have with politics in general, is that they villainize the other person so much that the only way that politics gets fueled is if there's an enemy, and we're each other's enemies. And that's my biggest issue, is that we're constantly being each other's enemy, but the real enemy is a lot of corporate, like a lot of corporate greed, right? Anyway, that's for another time. They'll have the common sense gun laws. They're like, yeah, we're for it. That makes all the most sense. But we don't want Democrats to be the one to propose it, because if they propose it, then it sounds like we're for them, and we're not for them, because there's a whole other There's a whole other slew of things that they represent that we don't represent.
You know
what I mean?
My idea for not wanting the other party to do it is because, like, it's vice versa. You know, in Spanish, it's le das la mano y te agarran el codo. You know, like, they take more than what you're giving them. And but to me, I guess going to my roots, Porfirio Diaz, he was the one that eliminated guns in Mexico. Actually, he did not. He said, you have the right to keep arms, but not to bear arms. So you can keep your arms in your house, your guns in the house.
But you can't like flaunt it.
But you can keep them out. And this is because around that time.
So it was like protect the property, but the moment it goes outside your property, we shooting your ass.
Right. So then at this time, there was a lot of bandits, right?
Yeah.
And Porfirio Diaz is known for, you know, killing people like lined up and just poof, 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 right. This is why he's considered one of the worst presidents. But these were bandits that were killing people for their property and taking their possessions.
Yeah, they were cowboys. They were just like the Wild West.
So I mean,
people don't understand that the Wild West also went south.
Yeah. So that's kind of where I'm all like, yeah, Porfirio Diaz, like, he killed those people. But I think maybe that wasn't that bad of a thing, right? Like, they were killing other people as well. You know, and just in case that some people are listening there, you know, like, thou shalt not kill. Yeah, that is true, but there's a difference between killing and murdering. And the commandment is thou shalt not murder, as in the senseless way. But anyways, going back to Porfirio Diaz, he ended up being a worse president because he killed protesters. So the protesters.
Oh, so then it kind of backfired on them.
So the protesters that were defending the bandits, and that's kind of what we get to see a lot now. Yeah. Like, there's a lot of bad things going on, and people go out and protest the people that maybe we shouldn't be putting in a pedestal. And and I mean, the order that he sent out was kill the traitors, so the soldiers that had become part of the protest, kill them. Like,
but traitor and bandit have a completely different connotation.
Right. So what did he say? Mátalos al caliente.
Yeah.
Al caliente, right? Right then and there. And it's like famous words from Porfirio Diaz. And he also said, and then kill la diezma, the 10%. But no, these soldiers went and killed everyone, and he ended up being one of the worst presidents of Mexico. Yeah. So then 1977 or 1970 something is whenever they said, okay, only the military can have weapons. And that's when narcos took off. Yeah. So there's a correlation there. You know, this is why I'm pro-gun, because you get rid of guns, crime goes up.
I'm pro-gun too, actually.
So,
but I like guns. I'm pro-gun. I'm a Texan, so I like guns. But I do think there's a middle ground somewhere.
It has to be.
Yeah, I do think that there's a way to create a gun culture that doesn't feel so fanatical.
To me, it's not so much about the type of gun you're getting, but more what's your health.
Yeah, well, 100%. That's why for me, I'm like, that makes it, like, common sense makes sense to me. Or those gun laws that are for psychological evaluations, constant training, renewing licenses, constant education, but like this and that, right? But this goes back to the other thing that I'm talking about, where the top of my list in terms of grievances with this country is corporate greed, because gun lobby makes so much money. Guns make so much money. You know what I mean? And I don't mind people getting rich. I'm a capitalist too. I don't mind people being like, yo, I wanna afford myself a very specific lifestyle. I don't mind that. It's whenever it gets greedy, whenever you make so much money that now you incentivize yourself to go and advocate for policy that hurts people, only because you want to keep making money, and you villainize the other side for trying to figure out a way to find a middle ground. Right. Just because if they even get remotely successful at finding a middle ground, then you lose you lose quarterly earnings. Mm-hmm. You lose yearly earnings. And You've had a record 10 years, 15 years of constant growth on revenue. Why would you want that to stop? Right? So then I'm like, yeah, that corporate greed, I'm hella against. You know what I mean? Because at that point, it is just greed. At that point, you're putting profit over people.
Right.
Right? And that is extremely problematic. And the NRA and all those gun manufacturers and this and that are so far removed from the people that they can't see how one, they're tethered to it. They're under this guise of protection and Second Amendment and like all this like however they want to mental gymnastics their way into feeling like they're okay. But people are dying, and that both those things can be true at the same time. You could be a constitutionalist while also acknowledging that people are dying and trying to find a middle ground. And maybe you will lose yearly revenue, but it's okay. You can go from 100 million to 95 million. You'll be all right. You know what I mean? Like, you'll be cool, dog. Eggs are still $6 and it's still, but like, you're going to be fine, bro. You know what I mean? Yeah. So, but I think like my biggest strength in being able to articulate that is also my biggest weakness, because again, I try to empathize with as many people as possible. So I'm like, I get it. I get why you would want to do that. I get why on a company level you're like, yeah, and you don't want to lose your job. Your board of directors, if they find out that you didn't make more money this year, they're gonna be like, all right, let's vote him out, right? Like, I get it. I get why but however, this is why I think my function is more so an artist than anything else, because I'm like people over profit.
It's very Christian of you.
Yeah, I got some qualities in there, right?
No, one that really kind of like, I really didn't understand why they went with this one. But the left side decided that they wanted to defund the police. I didn't think that was the right solution.
Yeah, I think that was just a bad wording.
The right solution to me, and I don't know why we don't talk about this more, is police training shouldn't be less than a year. It should be
Facts.
It should be a 4 year, like a bachelor's degree. It should
Facts.
be a 4-year program.
Facts.
And they also weed out the bad seeds.
And they also got to get paid more. So I actually think that they should fund it more. I also think that they should minimize or take away part of their actual job description. I think that certain things you shouldn't call the police for. I think that cops have a very good function and a very hard job, and they should get hella trained, like you said, for a long time. But also for them to know where their actual job is necessary. And when it's not. So if you created a police department, like say you took away the name the police department and you called it something else, like I don't know, I'm sure somebody can figure out a better word, but like in that department, it encompassed everything from like officers that go out whenever there's a homeless person that's having a psychotic break. That a type of officer goes for that.
Doesn't England have something like this?
I don't know, but
like traffic or something like that? I don't know.
Different functions for different problems, right? And instead of like one department covering all its bases, right? That requires more funding. I'd rather you put money into that, so that in case there is a disturbance where it's somebody having a psychotic break, we don't end up with that person dead just because somebody's afraid that they might get shot or they might get hurt, right? Right. I also so I agree with you. More money. More education. I actually think there should be more money in it. I actually think they should get paid more so that it incentivizes them wanting to keep their job. And I also think that they need to actually have consequences, which would mean to figure out a way to change the structure of the unionized police force. Because I'm typically pro-union, because I advocate for
No, I get you. This is why I'm against the teachers union too.
But I'm not against the union. I'm not against the police having a union so that they can so that they can collectively bargain for their money. Right. I don't mind that. However, you're so unionized that you are now a fraternity, and that fraternization causes or incentivizes you not to hold your own accountable. If somebody made a mistake and killed somebody that did not deserve to die, you need to understand that killing somebody that did not deserve to die and that it was unjust, you might go to jail for that. So you need to understand that instead of being like, nah, it's cool. I'm like, everything's gonna be fine. And you also need to know that nobody's gonna protect you when you do that.
Right.
That's how sacred the job has to be. That it's I was gonna say job over people, but like that's not what I mean. That the job is so coveted that we're gonna do our job right, and if you fuck up this job, we're gonna tell that we're gonna tell people you fucked up. You don't deserve to be here.
And
you know what I mean?
It wouldn't get like in any other job or industry, you wouldn't get rid of all the bad seeds. You know, just like there is a good gymnastics coach, there's a bad gymnastics coach. If there's a good doctor, there's a bad doctor.
Sure,
right?
But
it will be less.
But I do firmly believe that some jobs require the least amount of bad seeds as possible. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I don't want a bad pilot.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, there's some industries where, like, bro, you can't have bad apples. You know what I mean? Right. Like.
So yeah,
and I think cops are one of them. I think pilots are one of them. Like, I'm not flying to fucking Germany with like, oh, you know what I mean? We have a 99% of amazing pilots. Bitch, what? Like, I don't give a fuck that it's 99%. 1% is it makes me like really up. Who is the 1%? Can I get a list so that I know that I don't want to fly with those pilots? You know what I mean?
Right,
like,
yeah.
there's certain jobs that should not have bad apples, in my opinion.
Right. And
to your pragmatic view, there's always gonna be bad apples. But if the program or if the job or if the industry itself is what's the word I'm looking for? Is regulated to where if they do see a bad apple, the consequence is to get rid of it, not to protect it.
Yeah, that's
then it becomes like really easy.
That's the problem I have with the teachers union too. Is like, how is it possible you have a bad teacher, and then you're still paying them off while they're like on leave? Like, but anyways, I guess that's a whole nother subject. Yeah, no.
We're at like 130, right? 141. Yeah. So if you want to stop, we can, and we can just pick it up on on another day.
That's fine. I really need to take a leak.
Okay. Well, like I said earlier, I hope you guys like this episode. Every time I have to do the monologue, I get burped. We hope that you guys really like this episode. We'd love to have you back. We can keep talking. We can keep going forward.
It'll have to be before December.
Maybe, yeah, it'll have to be. Or like, I'll be coming back a lot, so it's all good. Okay. We can make it work. I hope you guys liked it. We can actually have more, like, if we wanted to get into like very specific policy or debate, like a very specific topic, we can do that. I'm super down for that. But thanks for coming.
No, thank you for having me. Thank you for the invitation.
It's always super nice to kick it and hang out. Like, subscribe, share, do the whole thing. We really appreciate you guys. Even though we just a bunch of fucking losers out here, it means a lot that we get your view, your like, your share. It's been a blast. We're gonna continue making more stuff for you. Hope you guys have a great weekend, great day. Stay smiling. We'll see you guys.
Jesus
God bless.
y'all.
And we'll see you guys next time. Peace.